So we go through another crazy portal again, and then we're flying through the sky together, and I was like, oh, and now we're on Earth, but it's Earth in the future, I think. It was like this Roman type, I don't know, this big huge outside place where it was like kind of like a coliseum or something, or a stadium, and there was all these hundreds and hundreds of evil dark energy beings, just the most evil vibrations that I was feeling. And I was like, oh, I recognize this, and I was like, no, we can't go down there, this is way too scary. Then my higher self assured me, no, I really need you to see this is very important. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So we fly closer, and it seemed like they were like these Nazi, evil, service to self, satanic, demonic, evil beings all together having this like symposium thing where it seemed like they were planning out how they were going to overtake the earth and how they were going to fulfill their master agenda and unleash it, all this terror onto the world. This is only a couple months, I believe, maybe a few months after the COVID-19 pandemic started in March of 2020. Welcome to episode 1 of the Evolved Sun podcast. My name's Matt. I'm going to be your solo host for this episode, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about what brought me to start this podcast, which is really, really crazy. I think a lot of you can probably relate. So for the past 10 years, I have been an addiction recovery professional. For almost 2 decades of my life, I was addicted to things like cannabis, alcohol, benzodiazepines, opioids, and other drugs. I was really self-medicating, severe, like high sensitivity, as a highly sensitive person with sensory processing sensitivity. I also was a very deep empath, so I would absorb the emotions of other people. And growing up in the 1980s and the 1990s, back then it was really hard to be an empath and a highly sensitive person. I'm also a Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon, Cancer Rising with a Cancer Venus. So that's a lot of emotion. That's a lot of intuition. And growing up with the friends that I had and the schools that I went to and the authority sources that I looked up to, it was really rough a lot of the time. I always felt like I was missing this certain something that other people seemed to have. I was always way into sci-fi and the stars and outer space and extraterrestrials, and I always felt like I wished that I could be abducted by ETs because I didn't feel like I belonged on Earth. In fact, so many times in my adolescence, childhood, and even adult life were just so difficult. I felt so alienated, different than other people. Felt like I saw through a bunch of the BS that the government, the education and the healthcare system, and all the kind of matrix norms we're talking about. I always felt like there's something wrong with this picture. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I was different. I didn't know what I seemed to be lacking. So it took a long time, but eventually I overcame addiction. It was just divine intervention, and all the stars seemed to be in alignment with respect to having a month off of school, not having any work at the time, living with my parents at the age of 32. I had moved back in to detox from drugs and go back to school. So long story short, I recovered from addiction. I had this massive phase of a few years where I had something called post-traumatic growth. I'm sure you've heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Well, I seem to have post-traumatic growth. I overdosed on a lethal combination of methadone and Valium. That is a long-acting opioid CNS depressant and a long-acting benzodiazepine CNS depressant. Between the two of those and taking too much, it put my body into severe respiratory depression. I passed out, stopped breathing. I vomited while I was laying down. Anyways, my mom got this psychic premonition. My mom's spirit guide told her, go downstairs right now, check on Matthew, something's not right. She went downstairs, and there I was, laying on my back, vomit trickling all over the place, barely breathing, and my lips were blue and my face was gray. So she called the EMTs. They got there, gave me a shot of naloxone, and they said at the hospital that if they would have got there and gave me the Narcan naloxone medicine, putting me into instant opioid withdrawal, if they would have got there 1 or 2 minutes later, I would have been dead. So that led to post-traumatic growth. I almost left my then 18-month-old daughter without a father for the rest of her life. So that was my wake-up call. And I finished school, to become a certified substance abuse counselor. Upon completing my school, I went to a year-long advanced-paced trade school, so I didn't have to take any general education classes like mathematics, foreign language, sciences. All of the courses, all of the classes, all the modules were all to become a certified alcohol and drug counselor here where I live in California. And I was just loving it. It was my new passion. Now I was going to be able to help other people to quit drugs and alcohol. And then when I got into the field, I did an externship at an outpatient opioid treatment program. And that was perfect because opioids were my main addiction and my hardest addiction to overcome, and my last addiction as well. So it was like perfect, but I was going to be able to help people. And 1 month into that externship, I was doing so well and just so passionate about it. And all the patients and the coworkers, the nurses, the doctors, the other counselors, the receptionists, they all thought I was a great fit to their treatment program. So like I said, about 4 weeks into the externship, that was a 4-month externship, the clinical director asked me, hey, we have a part-time position that is open. Rather than hire someone else, if you'd like it, we'd like to save it for you. So as soon as you're done completing all your hours, then you could just keep coming here, but on the payroll. And, it was like starting was $15 an hour, which was, better than I had made cooking in restaurants for about 10 years leading up to that. And so I was just gung-ho. Life was great. Here I am, sober, healthy, happy, completed school, about to complete the externship, and then all of a sudden I already got a part-time job lined up. Then when it came time to end my externship, turns out that the clinical director was able to get me a full-time position. So that was going to be more money, and I was like, this is great. So I thought that was going to be better. But it turns out that working full-time, 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. Was really rough. A lot of my caseload, counseling people, were people on government assistance, Medi-Cal. So it started off really fun, but then the more I did it, the more I got burned out. I realized that it was a lot of paperwork. I realized that the corporation that I was working for was not out there to help people primarily. It was a business model addiction treatment facility. So it was all about the money. It was all about getting patients on methadone, a very powerful opioid medication, and getting them on the highest dose possible and getting them patient retention as long as possible. So all the business meetings that we had, the employee weekly Thursday meetings, none of them were about how can we help these people to get off methadone and get on with their lives. It was all about how can we get people to stay in treatment, to keep swallowing their daily methadone, to keep coming to their counseling sessions, because that's how this company made all their money. Most of their money was from billing Medi-Cal for counseling sessions with patients on this government assistance. So I saw through a lot of the BS that was going on. Also, as a certified substance abuse counselor, it was outside of my scope of practice to talk about natural therapies. So I was really only able to discuss with my patients, substance abuse, relapse prevention, harm reduction, those types of things within my scope of practice. I couldn't talk about exercise or supplements or health strategies. It was just, over time, substance abuse counselors have the highest burnout rate out of any profession. And the average substance abuse counselor's lifespan or career span is approximately 2 years. I lasted about 3 years, and the whole last year I was there, my health was deteriorated, emotional health, spiritual health, for sure my physical health. I was losing a lot of weight. My caseload got bigger and bigger. At that clinic, we frequently had counselors and other staff members quitting because working at a methadone clinic is so stressful. Common times there's people high on cocaine and methamphetamines, common to use heroin on top of the methadone, common to have sex workers coming in and people that are drug dealers and doing drug deals in the parking lot. At a sister clinic that was pretty close by, maybe 10 miles away, somebody even in the parking lot of that methadone clinic grabbed a can of gasoline, poured it on somebody, lit them on fire. Immolation right there in the parking lot. We are constantly finding drugs and speed pipes and crack pipes and needles in the parking lot. So just the energy, being a very highly sensitive person and being a highly empathic person, I would constantly absorb the energies of my patients. People coming in there into my office for counseling sessions that were homeless, that were doing methamphetamines, and that were, in my opinion, possessed, or they had like negative entities attached to them, just really negative, uncomplimentary energies with my own energies. And so I found my self-care. At the beginning, I could do lots of self-care and that kind of counteracted it. But the longer I worked there, and the more people quit and the more people that I got on my caseload, if a counselor quit, all the other counselors had to dial up their caseloads to continue doing counseling sessions. And so we train new people, then they'd quit, train new people, then they'd quit. So between all the paperwork, all the negative energies, all the stress, all the burnout, even with self-care, I was rapidly falling apart. And so then I made this huge decision. It took me a long time to build up to it, but I finally got the courage to do it. So I gave my 2 weeks notice and left that profession and never wanted to go back to traditional substance abuse counseling again. I started my own website, and within 6 months I started to make pretty good money. This was to help people to quit opioids. I started a blog back in 2014 when blogging had become, this was like this new hit way where you could get traffic, get in front of a niche audience, share your skills and your education that you can teach people to overcome a challenge or whatever their passions or desires were. In my case, it was helping people to overcome opioid use disorder, but I wasn't restricted with my own website and with my own coaching program and courses to just my scope of practice. With this field, as a private practice coach, now I could do holistic recovery. I could cover the bio, psycho, social, environmental, and spiritual pillars and domains of both addiction and recovery. So long story short, that was very fulfilling and, a great way for me to make a living for many, many, many years. But then recently, about 18 months ago, I had been doing this for almost 10 years. Private practice, either a counselor at a clinic or a private practice coach. So between addiction to drugs and alcohol and then working and helping people to quit drugs and alcohol, that was such a huge part of my life, a huge phase of my life, phases of life, really. So here I was, I turned 42, and I started to go through a massive spiritual awakening. I had this just crazy out-of-body experience where I astral traveled. My higher self took me one night. This is probably about maybe a year and a half ago, right when I started to read books on the Law of One. So all the books by L&L Research with Carla Rueckert and Don Elkins, Jim McCarty, Gary Bean, and others. So I've read all the books by L&L Research, and that was one of the hugest parts of my spiritual awakening. First, I was reading books by Dolores Cannon. I read a lot of her books and listened to many of her audiobooks, which were just totally expanding my model of reality and of the universe and of the multiverse and parallel realities, reincarnation, soul, cosmic evolution, and plan and purpose. Eventually, I started to learn about the Law of One. And the way I learned about that first was an audiobook called The Raw Contact, Teaching the Law of One, Volume 1. There's a 5-volume series. This was a set of channelings done by Carla Rueckert as the instrument, they called her, the trance telepathic channel, and Jim McCarty was the scribe, and Don Elkins was the questioner. So they had been doing channelings with other Confederation sources for the Law of One, such as Kuo, Hatan, and others, but eventually they became ready. And so I think from 1981 to 1983 or 4 in Kentucky, they did years of sessions with an entity known as Ra. Ra calls themselves a 6th density social memory complex that went through 3rd density, just like Earth is in 3rd density right now. They were on the planet Venus, and they had a very lovely civilization to where they didn't have the opposable thumbs, so they didn't go through the phases like with humans. We have a really thick veil of forgetfulness, and we've got these hands with these big thumbs that are great for tool making, that are great for weapons making and weapon using. So, look at Earth. We've got this really, at this phase of Earth civilization, really disharmonious civilization that is pretty much being controlled by service to self entities, people that are, total service to self. They've cut off God. They are just all about power and control and absorbing light and energy from others. So a lot of us here are, you might have heard the term light worker or starseed or wanderers, people that have a service to others orientation. So anyways, Ra is a social memory complex. That means that there are many, many, many of them all that share this same memory complex. Very advanced, Here we are in third density. This is the density of duality, of the thick veil of forgetfulness. So we go through soul amnesia when we decide to incarnate on Earth. In our souls, in time-space, when we have our guides and our soul families and our higher self there, we know everything and we start to plan out our incarnation. We come to Earth, to third density, to get experience points and to make the choice of either service to self or service to others. And that is like the base point, the foundation for fourth density, fifth density, and beyond. Many of us here incarnating on Earth at this time, more and more people are being born over the past decades as wanderer souls or indigo souls or starseed souls, many different names for them. Volunteer souls. One of Dolores Cannon's books, one of my favorite books by her, is 3 Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth. So we have a lot of volunteer souls incarnate on Earth right now that have already graduated third density, whether it was Earth or other solar systems or other galaxies even. So now a lot of the wanderers here, according to Ra, this 6 density social memory complex, high density, high powerful being, according to them, most of the wanderers on Earth right now are of 6 density, less are from 5th density, and even less are from 4th density. 4th density is the density of love and understanding. 5th density is the density of wisdom, and 6th density is the density of unity. And it's so a lot of the wanderer souls, volunteer souls here right now on Earth have come back here to use the thick veil of forgetfulness. So we have the soul amnesia as a form of more and more catalyst. So there's so much catalyst here because of all the negativity, because of all the forgetting. We don't know that we're all sparks of the one infinite creator. So this is a chance for us to polarize more in consciousness for service to others, as well as many of us are doing work to balance wisdom with compassion. So fine-tuning of balancing both love and compassion with wisdom discernment. That's not all the volunteer souls here right now, but there is a high percentage of souls doing that. So anyways, that was one of the biggest things that led to my spiritual awakening. I ended up buying the boxed set of the Raw Contact books, Teaching the Law of One. Books 1 through 4 are all the main channeling sessions, which there are over 100 of. Book 5 is something they released much later, after a certain time span. Then it was like all these extra channelings and extra comments from the channelings rather, that they now had the permission to publish. And along with reading those books by Dolores Cannon, and watching amazing, very helpful YouTube channels by people like Abke, who in my opinion is the master of the Law of One, Christina Lopes, she calls herself the Heart Alchemist, and people that do hypnosis techniques with their clients, where they hypnotize them and take them to review past lives, to review pre-birth planning and soul contracts and karmic tendencies. So one night I was listening to this hypnosis session where one of Dolores Cannon's previous students that has now developed her own type of channeling. I can't remember her name right now, but if I remember, I'll put it up here on the screen so you can see that. I'll definitely put it in the link for the description box. This was like a approximately 2-hour long hypnosis session, and the client, the gentleman, was like vibrating the whole time, and I was listening to it with headphones on, and he was talking about the new earth, and he was talking about love, and anyways, it was such a surreal, it was an experience. Like I felt like I went through the experience with him. So that very night I finished listening to that, I went to bed, and in my sleep my higher self took me, and I was in my astral body, I believe. I'm not like an expert in this stuff, but it seemed like I was in my astral body or etheric body, and I was flying with my higher self. I forget his name. His name was really cool, but when I woke up, I forgot his name. And he took me, and he was like taking me through all these different scenes. I would go through this huge portal, and it was like I could feel like, whoa, like this crazy wormhole or portal of some kind, and I could feel it. It was like more real than anything I've ever been through living in third density Earth. So I don't remember all the scenes, but I remember 3 of them which left the biggest impact on me. One was I seemed to be in like a parallel reality or a parallel universe or timeline of some kind. I don't know what it was, but I remember flying into this scene, and I floated down And I was with, all of a sudden, walking up the stairs was my parents' old house where they lived. And my ex-girlfriend was walking up the stairs, only it was a different version of her. She had a little bit more weight on her. She was really bony when I was with her. So she had more weight on her. When I was with her, she had a lot of mental health issues, as I did too. She seemed like just really balanced and stable and grounded and healthy. And then up the stairs with her was a little child, a son. So I have a daughter with another person that was from before the relationship I'm talking about. So in this scene, I'm floating down, the colors, the sounds, the feelings. I was feeling unconditional love, vibrating, just this vibration of total love and joy and bliss. I felt so alive. The colors, I can't even explain them. It seemed a million times more real than right now. It seemed like that was reality and this is the dream. So then she looks at me, my ex-girlfriend. She looks like she sees a ghost. And that made me like, oh my gosh, does she see me? And then she smiles at me and she goes, you're back. And then I went up and I hugged the little boy, maybe about 4 or 5 years old. And it was like this most loving hug. So I think that was my higher self showing me what happens in another timeline, or maybe what could have been. Or I'm not sure really what it was. I have no idea. There's no way to prove this. Anyway, so then we fly out of there. I go through another portal of some kind, type where it just gets faster and faster, and I'm like vibrating and vibrating. Portal and colors, just the most amazing colors. Next scene, we're flying over this extraterrestrial planet where there's these big giant entities, these beings, just huge, and there was tons of nature and giant trees, and we get so close to them, they see us and they're like running after us, running after me, reaching up like to try and touch me, and I got scared to death. I was like, we gotta get out of here. So we flew off, and then the next final scene that I remember, there was more than this, but the third scene and final scene that I remember, this was the one that was right before I woke up. So we go through another crazy portal again, and then we're flying through the sky together, and I was like, oh, and now we're on Earth, but it's Earth in the future, I think. I'm not sure what it was, but anyways, it was like this Roman type, I don't know, this big, huge outside place where it was like kind of like a coliseum or something, or a stadium. And there was all these hundreds and hundreds of evil, dark energy beings, just the most evil vibrations that I was feeling. And I was like, oh, I recognize this. And I was like, no, we can't go down there. This is way too scary. Then my higher self assured me, no, I really need you to see this. This is very important. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So we fly closer, and it seemed like they were like these Nazi, evil, service to self, satanic, demonic, evil beings all together having this like symposium thing where it seemed like they were planning out how they were going to overtake the earth and how they were going to fulfill their master agenda and unleash all this terror onto the world. This is only a couple months, I believe, maybe a few months after the COVID-19 pandemic started in March of 2020. I can still remember this visceral feeling, the difference between the vibrations of total unconditional love and harmony and unity, where I was hugging my child in another timeline or parallel reality, whatever it was, and seeing my ex-girlfriend so healthy, so whole, so happy. The vibrations and colors of that compared to the vibrations and colors of this demonic, world domination planning scene were so opposite. So that freaked me out. Then we go through one more portal, and this is like the craziest portal yet, going through, vibrating, and then boom, at the end of the portal, instead of coming out into another planet or another dimension or parallel universe, whatever those were, all of a sudden this portal ends in two symbols. And these two symbols, and this is what my higher self really wanted me to remember. One of them was the symbol of COVID-19, and the other was the symbol for Nazis. And then I woke up right after that. I was vibrating in my bed and could not move for I don't know how long. Time was just, I couldn't even tell time at that point. Eventually, some point in the morning, I was able to get up, use the restroom, drink some water, but then I went back to bed. And if that was just a dream, if that was just like some lucid dream, very vivid lucid dream, how come my whole entire body literally felt like I had been doing that stuff, like I had been going through those portals and feeling those vibrations? My whole body was vibrating for hours and hours. It didn't subside till sometime that evening. So ever since then, that just like turbocharged my spiritual awakening. And ever since then, I have tried my hardest to stay passionate about helping people to recover from addiction, passionate about learning new things and creating new types of content and podcasting with it. But the more I have avoided starting this podcast, and if you can see some other videos I did in the past, I went through a little phase where I made some videos that were just kind of like a hobby, just a little bit of creative catalyst for some of the things I was learning, some of the things I wanted to share. But then it's been at least 3 months since I've uploaded a video because I was trying to plug back in completely to the 3D world, because I felt like that's what I needed to do to keep balanced and grounded and to continue to be, to make a living and pay rent, pay my bills, put food on the table for my daughter and I, doing addiction recovery work. This would be during what I've heard called and referred to as the void phase of spiritual awakening. Boy, I didn't like that void. Spiritual exhaustion, spiritual depression, spiritual fatigue, symptoms like brain fog and body aches and weird sleep disturbances, sleeping way too much, sleeping way too little, depression, anxiety, just so many things were coming up. So I tried to plug back in to the old reality, the 3D job that had become way too, I was stretching myself way too thin. I was doing way too many things, podcasting, YouTubing, answering many different email accounts, blogging, coaching, course moderation, Facebook group moderation. Between that and being a single dad and also trying to take care of myself and also try to continue to do my spiritual awakening stuff, it was just way too much. Retracing back a few steps, there was one night, maybe a year ago, 9 months ago. Time has gone by real fast, and I have a really weird perception of time lately. But I had this very vivid dream where it was another one with my higher self. It was lucid. I wasn't astral traveling, but it was my higher self showing me on this giant whiteboard this plan for what I was supposed to do next for profession and career-wise. It was like this loud and clear dream that, okay, I'm supposed to do this. And I woke up and I was like, what did it say? What did it say at the top of that? It was like this blueprint with a name of a YouTube channel and a blueprint for what to do. Throughout that day, I was meditating and then it came to me. It was supposed to be called Evolved Sun. In the Law of One contact and channelings, the sun is our sub-logos. So there's the absolute, the supreme reality, creates the logos, the word, the one original thought, which is created of the manifestation of unconditional love. Then there's the sub-logos. Humans, I believe, are sub-logos. Our sun is a sub-logos, and our galaxy is the logos. So evolved sun meaning our sub-logos. Anyways, so I started the channel. Started a YouTube channel called Evolved Sun, which you're watching right now. I ended up making, I think, a little over a dozen videos. Not of my face. They were mostly clips I had taken from people that I really loved, and I had put visual effects, editing over their voices and put links to their websites and their YouTube channels and such. So anyways, then I stopped that about 3 months ago because I didn't know if it was going anywhere. I was really passionate about it, but I was doing that on the side because I was so busy being a full-time coach and virtual coach for addiction recovery. I had a podcast co-host, we had employees, and so it was just so many different moving parts, so much complexity. Meanwhile, the more that I try to continue to stay plugged in or plug back in to the 3D work that I was doing in world, I started to get worse and worse symptoms. All of a sudden, I wouldn't be able to work for days. I would have to pound so much coffee and energy drinks and caffeine just to get an hour's worth of emails done. I lost all my creative juices and passion when it came to creating podcasts, and I didn't even want to make videos. I didn't want to write articles. It's just something it was visceral. It was like this whole body, mind, spirit thing that seemed like I was trying to go up this huge hill. I couldn't see a future in it anymore. I believe that it was my higher self giving me all this physical and mental symptoms as catalyst to kind of realize, okay, I need to just do it. I really need to just make the shift, go full in, quit doing the work that I was doing, do Evolved Sun 100%, because this is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about spirituality, the Law of One, metaphysics, hypnosis, reincarnation, extraterrestrials, the ascension of the earth and the earth peoples. So I'm very passionate about this. All of a sudden, this is giving me lots of energies. My symptoms, since I just quit last night, I had really nice emails and texts to people letting them know what's going on. And so now I'm going to keep things very, very simple. And the reason I want to keep it simple is because prior to this, the complexity was gigantic. I was answering 4 different email accounts for 3 different addiction recovery websites and a supplement website and my own personal emails. And it was so many different websites, so many different softwares, so many different passwords, so much time diffusing everything instead of getting one simple channel or one simple type of content and then just being really, really good and proficient at that, which is how I started off blogging, and why I got so good and so successful at blogging so quickly was because it was simple. Over the span of about almost a decade, things became way too complex, and all those different moving parts made it so it was like hard to concentrate and focus and do one good thing really, really well. So that's what I'm going to do and maintain with Evolved Sun. As soon as I made that 100% commitment, resolve, and decision, last night said that I was moving on from addiction recovery. Holy moly, I felt so amazing. I slept really good. I woke up this morning feeling like a different person. The fibromyalgia mirroring symptoms are gone. I have clear focus. I know that I have guidance support from my higher self and my spirit guides, as well as confederation sources like Ra and Kuo. And it's just amazing. So thanks so much for joining me on episode 1. If you haven't already, please subscribe if you want to see more of these types of videos. Take good care of yourself. And if there is a decision that you have been putting off for a while and you're starting to experience more and more symptoms and oh my gosh, you just can't handle it, think about what would be the benefits of making the hard decision, having the hard conversations, making the hard changes. And so I'll just leave you with that. Again, take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.